Chapter 8 of The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen. Today I want to talk about intuition. It's a word that Christensen uses in Chapter 8, and I think it's one of the most important words that come in play when it comes to disruptive innovation, when it comes to hedge funds investing in disruptive innovation. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's December 2nd, 2020. This is Krim Delco. For the day, the fund is down 8%. The market's up 20 basis points. For the year, we're up 310%. The market's up 13.2%. Intuition. Christensen in particular talks about this word and the problem of organizing a company around disruptive innovation. I want to read an excerpt from the book to illustrate this point. Large companies often surrender emerging growth markets because smaller disruptive companies are actually more capable of pursuing them. Those startups lack resources, it doesn't matter. Their values can embrace small markets, and their cost structures can accommodate lower margins. Their market research and resource allocation processes allow managers to proceed intuitively rather than having to be backed by careful research and analysis presented in PowerPoint. Let me rephrase that a little bit. So what he's saying here is that you have large companies that are in the business of growing, and they nevertheless surrender markets to smaller disruptive companies. Why is that? Even though the smaller companies lack the resources of the big ones. And Christensen focuses on the value system of companies. I spoke about this yesterday. The value system, which is kind of like the question, what should I do next? How should I do things? How should I solve dilemmas? How should I turn left or right here? Like all these kinds of questions. So questions that are not predetermined. Algorithms are not set. This is not hard-coded. This is the soft stuff that binds people together, that governs behavior. He's saying their values, so the small companies' values, can embrace small markets, and their cost structures can accommodate lower margins. Their market research and resource allocation processes allow managers to proceed intuitively rather than having to be backed up by careful research and analysis. So proceed intuitively. This is the key word. Intuitively, or intuition, according to the Webster Dictionary, the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. A thing that one knows or considers likely from instinctive feeling rather than conscious reasoning. Instinctive being relating or prompted by instinct, apparently unconscious or automatic. All right, so what is Christensen saying here is that we have, and this is very deep stuff, okay? We have thinking happens on different levels. Thinking happens at the frontal cortex, which neuroscience, I think by now is almost certain, happens in a way that we have this top-down approach. The CEO of the conscious system, the CEO of our nervous system, the frontal cortex, decides stuff. Intuition is bottom up. Intuition comes from bottom up. It is also very much in other literature. For example, The Righteous Mind, in the book The Righteous Mind, the author talks about the fact the elephant rider. So the frontal cortex is a small part of the big emotional intelligence that we have, the intelligence that is in our nervous system, in the subconscious, in all these lower levels of neurons and nervous systems that we have. All of that stuff is being driven up to the frontal cortex. The frontal cortex is rationalizing all of that, and this is what we call reason. Intuition is all the stuff that happens without us actually controlling it. So when we have this feeling, the gut feeling, that it comes from the gut, it comes from inside, it comes from somewhere. We don't know where from. That's why we're saying gut feeling, or we're saying, I have a feeling, instead of I know. I know is when I 100% know what to do. So again, I used the example yesterday. A cash register at a coffee shop doesn't need intuition. You come, you order a coffee, they make a coffee, they give you the coffee, they take the cash. This algorithm is clear. It doesn't require intuition. The business is run that way. There is no question. When Walmart delivers goods from a logistics center to their stores, the truck driver has to drive from A to B, unload the stuff, put it in the shelves. These are things, the processes, and also the resources of the company, which are predetermined, which you can use as an analyst, as a fund manager, to predict how the company is going to act, react, let's say in a recession, etc. The value system is much more difficult, and Christensen uses the I word, the intuition. And he's saying when it comes to intuition, large companies or incumbents are very bad at using intuition when it comes to disruptive technology. They're not necessarily bad at using intuition for sustaining technology. And the reason for that is actually pretty intuitive. I'm sorry, that pun was not intended. Here's the reason. So you have intuition when it comes to sustaining technologies because you have experience. You've seen this before. You have a feeling that maybe if you use this new type of internal combustion engine technology, your internal combustion engine car will get better, faster, it will have less repair problems. Something that in your experience, in the combination of all the information that you've gathered over the years as an experienced manager, tells you this is a good thing. And the more experienced managers you have, the more sustaining technology you can implement. And that's why incumbents are good at sustaining technology. And here's exactly why they're not good at disruptive technology, because it doesn't follow patterns. You cannot use this algorithm that you've used in the past, which was, what do I know? What is my experience? Let me draw from my memory. Let's combine this. Let's run this algorithm. Let's optimize and let's make a decision. You can't do that because the new disruptive technology is catering to new markets, is delivering new types of matrices, is new performance vectors. All these things are new, and therefore you can't really use your experience, your intuition. You can't use anything that you've used in the past. So what's the solution, according to Clayton Christensen, is to create a smaller company, create incentive structures which are such that you get promoted for driving this new innovative technology at its own organic growth rate. You can't push it. You cannot make a $10 million business, billion-dollar business in a year just because your other company, your mothership is so big that only $1 billion will get the kind of growth that you need to be recognized in the boardroom. You can't force it. So you have to have a sizable organization, a right-sized for what the market is. You have to be able to follow the customer, the new customer, not the old customer. And most importantly, you have to use your intuition because, and this is what Christensen means when he talks about organize yourself around learning. But it is just another word for have an intuitive marketing instead of an algorithmic marketing. And this is what Jim McKelvey calls an innovation stack. The innovation stack requires intuition. When they built Square, they started with accepting payments at the grocery market. They solved the credit card problem, which was imminent and in those times that you couldn't accept small payments if you were a grocer or like an organic market type person or a coffee shop. So they solved that problem. They created new problems. For example, how do you make the payment? Well, you need this chip reader. Then you have other problems which come with that. For example, how about you do inventory management? How about you do sales and all that reporting just within the software that the payment system is offering? How about you add new currencies such as Bitcoin onto that? So there's a lot of these new things which intuitively you start growing, because in the past, let's say in the payment banking industry, those problems didn't exist. They never were there. You never had the problem of solving for a small coffee shop which had a payment system issue and a reporting issue and a tax issue and a currency issue, and you had these millennials coming with Bitcoins. All these things didn't exist. So you need intuition, you need intuitive managers, intuitive salespeople, intuitive engineers that can solve those kinds of problems. So intuition is a key problem. Now, intuition is something that is unconscious in the sense that it's not logically driven by the frontal cortex. The frontal cortex does have control over the final decision. So I think I'm a strong believer also in free choice and free will and these things in certain confined circumstances. So maybe in the big picture, we don't have free will and we're all driven by this random multiverse and we end up in all these multiverses, but that's not very relevant for my fund management business right now. What's relevant for my fund management business is simply, can business A that I'm invested in hire the right people that can drive the kind of growth that disruptive technologies require? This is my fundamental question and the main topic of chapter 8, which is, how can I organize myself around the disruptive technology? Very concretely, how can Tesla, our largest position, how can they organize themselves around the disruptive technology of an intelligent electric luxury car? What is that technology? The technology is battery management, and drivetrain. It is software as a service delivered to a car. Problems arise, for example, how can I have service around the customer base which has this type of car? All these things need to be managed intuitively. However, there also have to be processes, for example, in a sense, well, I have to make sure that certain things get done. So how do you solve that problem? This is the big question, and I don't think Tesla has the holy grail answer here, but at least they are intuitively managed to the point that they're still operating like a startup. And Musk is trying to keep it that way as much as he can. I am pretty sure he's scared himself of the market cap right now that he has. He probably is thinking to himself that I am not ready for that kind of responsibility. However, I see the goals, the end goals that I have, which is accelerating the transition to sustainable energy and sustainable transport, accelerating the transition to autonomy. Those are big goals. And Christensen also talks about that, actually, how to organize around disruptive technologies. Well, the best is to set goals very clearly. The goals themselves are very clear, hard-coded, and then you have an intuitive approach towards those goals. So how do you actually do sustainable energy is not hard-coded, because that is a bumpy road, a very curvy road, a lot of meandering and all that stuff required. But the end goal, the North Star, is we need to get rid of fossil fuels. How are we going to do that? And we discussed this in the past when we spoke about the beginning of infinity and the good and the bad problem question. A bad problem is to solve climate change. That is a bad problem because we don't have an explanation for what climate change actually means. We can't measure it, and therefore we don't have good explanations for how to solve it. The problem of too much fossil fuel, however, that's very solvable. The solution for too much fossil fuel is use less of it. Find ways to do transportation with less fossil fuels. That's it. So now you can say, okay, which path are we going to go? Are we going to go hydrogen, battery, lithium ion? Which kind of lithium ion batteries? Are we going to do solid state or not? What kind of architecture? This is the innovation stack built towards the goal of less fossil fuels. This is doable. And to end this episode, I just want to mention a quote by Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist from Stanford, and he spoke about Neuralink, and he said something unbelievably important. He said, look, from a neuroscientific perspective, Neuralink is trying to solve an immensely difficult problem. There's lots of people that don't like the company because they try to do something that science has been trying to do for decades, and et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to go into that conversation. He said one important thing. He said, the good thing about Elon Musk and Neuralink is they're setting a clear goal. We want to help people with certain diseases, such as certain motor diseases, certain neurological diseases, and we want to help them. Let's find solutions. This is the biggest value add that Neuralink is offering to business and science. And I think this is exactly the modus operandi for Tesla and SpaceX. Tesla has a clear goal: get rid of fossil fuels, make an electric car, make it good, make it intelligent, make it sexy, make it luxury, make it profitable. Let's get to that point, produce it at scale, make the autonomy work, all these things. Bring the batteries down, make sure competition doesn't erode the profits and therefore kill the market. All these points are being checked. It's not very complicated. Once you understand where you're going, you know all the obstacles that could prevent you from getting there. And they're all the big picture stuff. Prevent competition, make sure customers are happy, make sure you make money, make sure you have a cost structure that allows you flexibility so you can answer competitive threats. You can also intuitively grow with the customer if they want something that you might not have foreseen, but you have the cost structure to deliver it, you can do it. So all these things are absolutely crucial. And to summarize this episode, I want to end with, again, with the beginning of what Christensen said in chapter 8, which is that small companies, the biggest advantage of small companies is that their marketing and research and sales development and product development can be built intuitively. And this is a word that we want to focus on a little bit more at Orange Capital Partners. Intuition is not just important for the companies we invest in, it's unbelievably important for us also. The way we manage the fund. We cannot manage this fund algorithmically. We have to manage it intuitively. And intuition means it has to come from experience, from intelligence, and from a gut feeling, thought process that is happening in the subconscious. And this is a very difficult concept to accept for fund managers. I think it's key. It's the same concept that drives surfers, skiers, Alex Honnold doing free solo. It's the exact same concept. You cannot rationalize everything. You cannot do mathematical models about every move you're going to make. You need to rely on your intuition, which is a combination of experience and intelligence and gut feeling. Thank you.